Story about a little girl who's being put to bed one night by her mother. And the mother tucks her in, is about to leave the room, and the little girl says, "Oh, Mommy, won't you stay with me till I go to sleep?" And the mother says, "But honey, don't you know God is always with you?" And she says, "Yeah, but I want somebody with skin on." Because we don't often have enough faith in the invisible presence that loves us far more, because it cannot love us and has absolutely no judgments about us. Today's song, what Kenneth is talking about, is the divine feminine, that we need to feel that nurturing presence about. And my talk, though, is about Numbers 14, book of Numbers in the Bible, something you're all familiar with. And I want to tell one of the old stories of Numbers, and that nurtured you so as a child. That's a good one. Didn't your mother put you to bed at night reading from Numbers? In your foster home, what have you, the orphanage, didn't they read Numbers? It's the 14th chapter of Numbers that I'm going to read from. Stand. Now, what we must understand is that Moses and some other people went as spies, went into Canaan to check out the promised land there to see if it was safe to go in. Okay, already we've got issues here. They had to go into the promised land as spies to see if they could overtake the people there. Okay. Yes, the Bible is a wonderful book. And what they found were these gigantic people. The great big people lived in Canaan, and it's like, how will we kill them all in order to be in the promised land, to have our good? And so you cannot look at this historically and feel an ounce of spirituality. You must look at it metaphysically. And all the giants represent our great big thoughts, the thoughts we're afraid of. They would represent our dreams. If I'm to be, what could the promised land be metaphysically except a land of peace, a land of joy, or a place in my thinking that is joy-filled, that is peace-filled, that is free from bondage, not just for me, but for all. Because as long as I see one that I'm holding bound to an unfavorable situation, and that can go one that I hate, or it could be the one I call poor thing. Oh, that poor thing. For me to do that to another, I am holding them bound to a lower position. The people I feel sorry for, the people I pity, I'm holding them bound. And when I hold them bound, I hold myself bound. And I do understand empathy, and I understand you see someone struggling and you feel your own pain. But to go to God and say, this poor person, to go to yourself and say, this poor person, an alternative to that is, I am willing to see this in truth so that I do not judge it incorrectly. Imagine if we were willing to assess the world correctly rather than incorrectly. But the only way to do that is through, if you look on the front of your bulletin, it says divine guidance, the way through fear. When I see someone struggling, my fear comes up. And I transform that into pity, anger. Someone's suffering, and I say, whose fault is it that this person is struggling? Whose fault is it that this person's in trouble? Whose fault is it that I'm in trouble? Whose fault is it? Well, that is not seeking divine guidance. That is seeking to maintain the fear, that is seeking to maintain the limited belief in what we call an unlimited God. So many of us, how could God let this happen? And another, who sees more correctly, would ask, how could man allow this to happen? How could we allow each other to suffer so? How could I allow myself to suffer so? I'll tell you how, by forgetting. By forgetting who and what I am. And then maintaining the forgetting. That's how we do it. That's how we do it. So, in 14, it's after Moses has come back and Joshua's come back. And says 14, then all the congregation raised a loud cry, and the people wept that night. And all the people of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron, the very ones that they trusted as their leader. They said, yes, you lead us. And because you're telling us about the promised land. And then they wandered through that desert for years and years and years. And then they find out that the promised land isn't so promised. So now let's hate the leader. Let's just hate these people who have been doing their job, and now they've come back to say, what we've got to overcome is our thinking about the perils ahead. Not overcome the perils, overcome our thinking, because all this represents is our thoughts. The whole congregation said to them, would that we had died in the land of Egypt. Egypt metaphysically represents bondage. Would we had died back there where we told we could be set free from? Would Egypt, or would that we had died in this wilderness? Why does the Lord bring us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones would become a prey. Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt? So what we're saying here is when I'm scared of overcoming, of moving into my bigness, well, that's too much. I'm going to go back to my little life. I'm going to try to go back to my little thoughts. Go back to, the safe fears, I'll just go back to poverty. I'll go back to not trying to come out. And of course, once you've left, once you have entered out of that bondage, there is no going back. And if you're stuck in the middle, that's hell. Quite frankly, that is hell. That is a living hell, to be stuck in the middle. Anybody? You ever tried something and it got too scary? Yep. And you tried to go back and you can't go forward and you're just left here wishing. I wish I had the courage. I wish. And then we turn that into blame. Well, it's somebody's fault that I can't move forward. It's somebody's fault. Let's blame the president. Let's blame some foreign president. Let's blame our previous president. Let's blame our grandparents. Let's blame our parents. Let's blame our spouse. Let's blame our money. Let's blame our body. Let's blame something when all we really have to do is go within and expect guidance. Why else would you go within except to expect a divine thought that may not take you clear across the desert, that may not take you all the way out of the wilderness, but it'll take you the next step. And couldn't the next step be enough for now? Just the next step. I know when I was learning David's song, and I've learned 2 songs now, because that's what I had the courage to take the next step for. But I look at that sheet of paper with all those words on it, and I always start with, I'll never learn this. How will I ever memorize all this? And then I get on a train for the city on a Monday afternoon, and I memorize the first verse. And the first verse leads into the second verse, leads into the third or the chorus, and within a couple of days, I know the words to this song. I've proven it a few times now. And so it tells me, sit still. Sit still and watch it unfold. I do know I am not one who can look at this page and memorize it by I have no idea what that says. I had the pressure, I've got to know this by next, are you kidding me? There'd be no way. But if I say, I can learn before Moses and said, let us go up at once and occupy it, I can learn that. And then I can learn the next sentence, and the next sentence, and the next sentence. I can do that. So moving on here. And they said one to one another, let us choose a captain and go back to Egypt. Let's find a leader to take us backward. Because the leader taking us forward is not satisfying me. Then Moses and Aaron, I love this, fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the people of Israel. To fall on your face is to just show your belief, to show your faith. Oh, fell on the face. And Joshua, the son of Nun, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had spied out the land, rent their clothes. And what this means, to rent your clothes, is to give up the physical and go with the spiritual. To tear at their clothes. So it means to rent your clothes. Doesn't mean lease them out. It means to tear them. Just in case anybody's confused. What does he mean, rent out of their clothes? To tear their clothes, which is to show, I don't care about this. Go within. Go within. Know the truth within. Rent their clothes, and said to all the congregation of the people of Israel, the land which we passed through to spy it out is an exceedingly good land, the place of freedom. The promised land, meaning the free thought, is an exceedingly good place to be. If the Lord delights in us, he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land which flows with milk and honey, which just means sweet. It just means sweet. And the Lord, what they're talking about here, they have in the Bible was written to get people with limited minds to associate it with a bigger mind, but still a personality. And that's why it talks about God and Lord and things as if it's a person doing this, as opposed to a principle. But we're big people. And so when we study this metaphysically, when you read words like Lord, think of law. When you see words even like God, think principle. Think that the principle will carry me through into truth. The law will carry the application of law. It's not going to do it against my will, but I cannot escape the law, so I might as well use it for good as opposed to go backward. Only do not rebel against the Lord or the law. And do not fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us, and their protection is removed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. And this is one of my favorite passages in the Bible. This next one. But all the congregation said to stone them with stones. That's brilliant, isn't it? Who wrote this? To stone them with stones. How about that? Word of God. To stone them with stones. Let me throw stones at someone who wants to help me get free. Let me kill the voice of God. Let me kill it off, because it's just too much for me to think about. To take that risk into freedom from bondage. Let me hate my neighbor. Let me hate you. Let me hate anybody. Let me hate myself, rather than move into that land. Because the story is too good to pass up. It's just too good. I'm not going to get set free until my past is undone. Until my past did not happen. You ever felt that way? You're not going to forgive your parents till they make what they did not have happened. That was my big thing for years. I will forgive you when you undo it. When you make it not have ever happened. So that can't have happened. That can't be done. Except there is one little secret. And I've mentioned it before. There is a way to undo your past. Have a different thought about it. When you think differently about it, it didn't happen that way. The facts will still be the facts, But the reality will be entirely different. The experience of it will now become entirely different. And I've known people who said, I don't care, I'm not doing it. They hit me, they cursed me, they beat me, they raped me, they did whatever. If it means I have to go to hell hating them, then I will. Now, fortunately in Unity, the only hell we have to go to is in our mind, right here and right now. But there are some people who are willing to live in that mental hell rather than change the details of the past, change the thoughts of the past. I've been in that position on more than one occasion. Probably today, who knows. But at every opportunity, I have a chance to think differently, to see differently. A couple of little things to point out here. The first effects of fear in this chapter in the Bible is panic. And when we go into panic, what it does is it paralyzes the reasoning power. I can't make a decision. I can't make a choice. We've done it on the road, some of us. We've been on the highway. And so I don't know which way to go. There's too many cars around. When I first started commuting up here, oh my goodness, I would have to ride in the right-hand lane almost the whole way because I was so afraid of changing lanes. Because I was driving David's car then, and the worst thing that could happen is I would wreck his car. That would be the very worst thing that could, because you hurt somebody else's stuff. There is no forgiveness. I don't know, like who's in my family. You get a ring on a table. Oh my goodness. And this teacher said, coolness under stress requires courage. Where do we get our strength from?
God.
Principle, God, the Lord. We get our strength from truth. When I apply truth to my thoughts, capital T truth, then I have courage to take that step into the wilderness. Wilderness metaphysically is not the woods out back. The wilderness is into a place that is unfamiliar to me in my mind. It is a place where I am free to heal. Meditation on a daily basis is the wilderness. Every time I go into meditation, I am risking everything I know being different. That's why a lot of people don't want to meditate, because it would be too overwhelming to them when they come back from the silence and they aren't thinking the same way. Now, anybody who has done it with some affirmative results where they're willing to see the light says, oh my goodness, I got to get on board with this. Let's do this again. And then they develop a meditation practice, and life gets easier. I know when I started praying differently, my life changed overnight. Overnight, I began to perceive everything differently. The people I hated, the people I feared, the annoying people, which were also the people I feared, I didn't have to fear my reaction to them because I suddenly knew what to do. As I felt the itch, the annoyance come on, I went into prayer. I went immediately into prayer, surrendering my will and my thought over to the care of what I thought of as a loving presence that had the true answer. And I would receive that from my superconscious mind into my conscious mind so that I was telling myself a different story than before. And so therefore, this being, this situation in front of me was no longer persecuting me. Nor did I have to have guilt for being wrong in the first place, for being mistaken. Didn't have to have guilt or shame. I could suddenly be right there in the moment, loving the moment. Suddenly, this thing that had been annoying or frightening became a great gift because it brought about a healing of a lifetime of misperception. This irksome thing, this horrifying thing, whatever it is, became a great opportunity for shift and change and love. To realize, oh my gosh, I am loved. I guess I've always been loved and I just didn't know it. And those moments, and I'm sure you've had them, where you've woken up in a moment and said, I am loved. And I had forgotten. I'll bet you I was always loved. And always, I've had these opportunities from the beginning of my consciousness. I've had these opportunities, and I just didn't notice them. Thank goodness I'm noticing them now. Thank goodness I'm noticing them now. And so, that's how we begin to parent ourselves. That's how we become a holy mother to ourselves, a holy father to ourselves. When I begin to see that I don't need you to be different for me to be good. And you don't need me to be different for you to be good. I don't need them to be different. If that is a holy parenting thought of love and wisdom and truth. And I'm going to read one little thing more. Maybe two. Yeah, I'm going to read both of these. One comes from 1 John chapter 3. And it starts with verse 11. It's short. And it says, false thoughts are all thoughts that are based on the idea of separateness. False thoughts include, but are not limited to, thoughts of guilt, attack, fear, hatred, and regret. All of these thoughts imply that there is a mind that is separate from yours with separate will and desire. All of these thoughts imply a conflict now, in the future, or in the past. All of these thoughts are mistaken because none of these thoughts are based in truth. How wonderful. And then over here in Revelation, which one did I do? Oh, shoot. That's what a highlighter's for. I'm sorry. Okay. Remember this. It is your true desire, recognized as true desire by you, that will see you through the darkness found within the recesses of the mind. If the darkness seems too much to bear, call upon yourself, capital S, self, and your true desire. You shall be lifted up from the darkness into the light that shines from within your own true desire. And so, the next time fear rises up in you, ask yourself, what is my true desire right here and right now? And I am open to hearing. It's kind of the song that tells me the truth of my being, because that is my true desire, to know myself, to know myself, to know myself. And that is our divine guidance. Thank you.